Hey friends, you've got Renee Rivera here on my SIRS journey of healing, which is chronic inflammatory response syndrome. Also here to help you on your journey as well, or a significant other in your life. If you might be that support person for them. So I'm just here today to talk about the basics of mold remediation. I say this because I'm finding out, even in our own, as you can see, we're in the process of our remediation. We're towards the end of it. Hallelujah. While in the process of the remediation, I was finding that I was getting some confusion. We had originally written down our steps, but then I was starting to question like the solution we were using, ran into some hiccups with our vacuum, so I had to do some extra, what would you call it, studying, research. And in that, I'm finding even more companies that are saying, hey, we've got this product, it's really good, to the point of some products saying, we're so good that you don't even have to do any kind of demolition. You don't have to fix anything. You just need to spray our stuff. And I'll be honest, it sounds convincing. And so convincing to the point that a friend actually reached out to me this week and said, hey, we're thinking of doing this. We're finally remodeling and we're looking at doing this mold treatment. And that's all they said. And I looked at it and like, oh, shoot. I had just, in my new research, I had just stumbled across that same company and it really sounded great. And I was like, whoo, if it's that easy, shoot, I'd rather pay the higher amount of money, make an easier remediation job. But then as I realized, wait, does that follow the steps? And so I had to go back to, okay, what are the basics that have to be done for investigation/mold remediation? There are some basics that you need to do no matter what the company is, no matter what the solution is or product you choose. There's some basics. And I shared with her as nicely as I could is, if you choose to go with this company, you need to know that then only to use that solution during that piece of the remediation process. They are not the end all. And they claim, we spray this, it's going to solve your problems. It's not. A solution alone will not. To the point of, I reached out to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, as well as several other local mold remediators, because I was just questioning the solution I had chosen. Yeah, I had a questioning moment. And so I just wanted to find out how safe that was. Though I had done so much research of finding the solution that I chose, I began questioning it. And so I went to professionals again and asked. Well, the EPA actually did respond to my question, sort of. And the statement they put was, no one should be, what's the word? I'm consolidating what their answer was. They quoted from their website and put it in my email. But the bottom line was, they said, a biocide, spraying a chemical, is not your end all. That is not a mold treatment. That's not what I asked, but all right, so it did validate what my friend was asking and being able to share that with her. So this is what I want to share with you is the basics. Bottom line, when you are doing your investigating mold remediation, the first thing that is necessary to do is find your source of water intrusion, okay? There's water being intruding. There's intrusion of water somewhere that is feeding mold spores. So mold starts after 48 hours of water sitting somewhere, and there being a source that's continuing to feed it. And if you're not finding the cause to the moisture, you're not going to solve your mold. You might be able to clean up areas, but you still need to find your source, okay? So number one, find the source of water intrusion and what the moisture cause is. Same thing. Second thing, you must remove damaged and water-stained porous material that's affected. If you're able to remove it, it is wisest to remove it. The example would be wallpaper, gypsum board, your drywall. Removing any drywall that has been affected and stained by the water that has been flowing in that area. We'll say that. You don't want to do an encapsulation only. You don't want to do a solution only because those things are still leaving the mold there. But please remember those two. One, find your water intrusion source and solve it. Number two, remove the damaged material. Porous materials hold in, so pores, it's porous, so it can absorb. And what it's absorbing is not only the water, but it's also absorbing the mold spores. That is why that is so important to remove those. And any mold that's visible, you want to remove it, okay? Now, those are the most important two steps where many companies miss, but there are several other steps that also come into play, and I'm just gonna go through it really fast, okay? You should be doing all this under a negative air pressure machine in a sealed, contained area, proper, personal protective equipment. You should have a sealed HEPA vacuum while you're working on all this. Once the product is removed, that porous material water stain, then you want to be HEPA vacuuming during this whole process to alleviate as much action in the air as possible. And so then you're spraying your solution. They say three rounds is best. So you're spraying the solution and treating the area, but then you're also treating the whole room as well. We're talking ceiling, floor, plastic. So you're not just spraying your solution, your mold killer, or however you want to call it, but that mold solution needs to be, sprayed on all of the damaged areas, the places that you worked on, as well as the rest. And then once that dries, you go in and you HEPA vac it, because then spores are captured by that solution, drops to the floor. You want to be able to sweep that up and be having that HEPA vacuum that's sealed. It's the best way to be doing that, so it's not going back in the air. You also want to have that HEPA filter on your negative air pressure machine, so it's also drying things out, but cleaning the air as it's kicking it out, and then sucking spores into the HEPA filter. So once it dries, the solution dries, you then HEPA vac it, and they say 3 rounds of that, spray, dry, HEPA vac. Once that's done, you then damp wash terry cloth, so there's no lint being left behind, with a non-residue surfactant, is what they say. I'm not going to go into all the different kinds that you can choose. This is just going to be a basic one. And then once you've washed a wall, you go right immediately after that wet wash, and you go and dry it with a microfiber cloth, or like the Swiffer cloths that are dry. So you do that wet, then you go dry. Then you let that room dry, all the areas that you've cleaned. Once that's dried, you then can seal all of the areas that you did your work on, or areas where porous material was removed. You still want to seal those upper parts. You want to seal your wood beams. You want to seal your floorboards. So that's just some basics for you, not all the details, okay? So hopefully this helps you. Boy, it sure did help me. And then I also had to write it down, so I knew I was going back to it. Another great website to go to is for surviving mold. You look up Dr. Richard Shoemaker. Dr. Shoemaker is with a panel of SIRS doctors and professionals. He wanted to research SIRS, the chronic inflammatory response syndrome illness, was researching that and what's best practices for those of us with it. Just because of all the different chemical sensitivities and just the special needs that we have, because there's so many different triggers. And he pulled together many professionals, remediators, and air quality people, you name it. He pulled all these professionals together, created this panel, and I will go to his website to gauge my decisions on what is the best practices for us currently. And what I have found is that even governmental agencies, I know it's going to sound negative, but many other ones that you would trust, they're still talking about, oh yeah, you can use bleach, or oh yeah, you can do this. So there's a lot of advice out there, but it is not the best. I'm just going to say that. So I choose to follow what is best for those with the SIRS and mold illness. And the best one out there I have found is what Shoemaker has produced, Dr. Shoemaker. So I will gauge my decisions on what I can find on his website. Now I can't say I can find everything down to which solution, which HEPA vac, you know, those kind of decisions I had to make on my own. But they can at least guide you. So hopefully this has helped even simplify you having to even to go to that.
Hey friends, I want to jump on at the end of to share with you a little bit extra information. So before we started this mold remediation job, we had a professional mold remediator come out and assess the damage that the water had done in our back room. And when he did the walk around and checking it out, the amount that was affected was smaller than the palm of my hand. So this is what I mean by a small area, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a small area can't have a very potent, dangerous mold on it. Because ours was small and it was not the dangerous sort of mold, his comment was, well, you can hire me, but my guys are going to laugh because they're going to see how little this job would be and they'll just giggle. And I said, well, at that point, I told him I was doing all the research, I told him what my health situation was, and that I was pretty confident that we could do it ourselves. And so I shared with him what the steps were that I researched for a medically sound mold remediation. He was in agreement and said, go for it. So we did get we'll call it the pre-assessment from a mold remediator come in and assess the situation, let us know we could move forward and do it ourselves. Just making sure you know that. And then when the job was done, we also had another professional mold remediator came out and review the work that we did to make sure it was sufficient, you know, up to par, that we completed the job, just because it was our first time. And by the way, my husband did the work. I did not, because I'm a SIRS patient. That's not something anybody with mold illness should be touching. Okay. So the second gentleman came in and he had said, we did a fabulous job. Was actually impressed, impressed of our knowledge, impressed of the work that we did. So whoop, whoop, kudos. Also, your professional remediator will recommend how to treat the rest of your home and your belongings, and even your possessions, if they can be salvaged or remediated. So for our situation, it was so small, we did not have to do a full house remediation. But others do, depending on the extent of the mold and the situation. So every situation is different. So mine's going to be different from yours. And that's why you want to get that professional in, so they can advise you on not just your mold removal and treatment, but what do you do with the rest of the house? Because the rest of the house, many times it does have to be treated. For us, we did a mold cleansing afterwards, which was that surfactant cleaning of all. We did the walls, I did the ceilings, the floors, all the belongings got washed, because I just wanted to give you those basics of get your first stuff done. And what you want to make sure a professionals coming out doing the work, you want to make sure they're doing those steps as well. Okay, so more on other messages for you to come. So take care, stay well.